So, last week I spoke with Ricardo Woolfolk from who runs a sports podcast, and we were discussing how organizations like the NFL have, for example, black men as the face of an organization, even though the team, the owners and the managers, and everyone sort of on the top level, executive um, level, they all profit from the NFL. All of them are predominantly white. As someone who works in TV production, what do you think is the logic of these white executives when it comes to firing people who are outspoken, like, say, for example, Gabrielle Union or Orlando
Yeah.
Jones? I know that's something that we sort of touched on earlier.
Yeah, I think about this a lot, and of course with those two examples right now, particularly. I also I always think remember the Kendall Jenner Pepsi
Oh, yeah.
commercial?
Oh,
I always
God.
think about I always think about like the black people or person, let's be real here. The black person who works in Pepsi's marketing department. Like I always think about them and I think about like I was like, I feel like I know them. I don't know who they are, but I feel like I know them so well. Just like having to sit there while like Pepsi comes up with this like idea and like not being able to say that it's not a good idea. Um,
Like what
I feel
it's
like
like to stick your neck out in like
well,
a.
like yeah, like we'll stick your neck out for sure, but also like because I feel like a lot of us go through this moment where you stick your neck out once and then you kind of stop because
Mhm.
uh I once I once worked for this company, and they pitched a show. They pitched a show. It was a cartoon show, and they pitched it to a broadcaster, right?
Mhm.
Uh, and the show, I'm trying to just be very vague, but like the show had like two main characters, and then like it felt like a lot, but like eight other characters, and like they
Mhm.
were all on the cover of the document, like the character designs.
Mhm.
And I wasn't at this meeting. Like I wasn't at the pitch. I wasn't important enough to be at the pitch. But they came back after the pitch with this document where all the character designs were on the cover, and they were like, "Amelia, do you see this?" And I was like, "Yeah." And they were like, "Did you know that all of these characters are white?" And I was like, in my head, I was like, "This is a trap." But there's no way to answer it because the designs are on the cover. Like
Uh-huh.
yes, they're all white,
Mhm.
but like you could see it, they could see it. Like I was unaware that I was on this project that was not mine, like that I had not touched. I was unaware that I was the one that was supposed to be like, by the way, all like eight characters are white. Um,
So did he
and
like expect you to be the lone voice to sort of.
yeah, because I was like, eventually, I like looked at my boss and I was like, yes, they are all white. And I gave a pause because I didn't know how to answer. But and they were like, why didn't you say anything? We need you to tell us these things. Blah 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 blah. And again, like all of these characters, you designed them. Like
Yeah.
you gave the designer notes. Like like you yeah. Um Ironically one of the characters was supposed to be Asian, but
Mhm.
they didn't look Asian. But they did have purple hair and I should have
Oh.
known. I should have known. Um but it was wild and I often think about that moment because later on thing is there were so many moments and I forget what happened, but there was something that I was like really uncomfortable with and like it was just like too racist. I mean you think I would remember it, but there's been some moments that I can't. But I remember this is when I was like in my earlier 20s too.
Mhm.
And so I remember I brought it up with HR, but it was like I brought it like I remember I went to HR and I was like, how do I handle this situation? Like, how do I talk to my boss to explain this thing? And HR was like, you just tell them, like just tell them that it's racist. And I was like, okay. So like I went and I didn't get a chance to do it because HR did it. but then I got in trouble for going to HR. Like,
What?
yeah, everything's ridiculous. And I got like chewed out for 2 days. I like cried a lot because I was like, I don't understand how this happened this way. I was just like lost. HR went on vacation, so like I didn't even
Oh my
have like
gosh.
I was
Didn't
like,
even have
okay,
anyone to
cool.
like stand up for you.
Yeah, I don't think they would have, but like I was just like, I don't know what to do here. And after that time, like that was I switched to do just production work, which is like my opinion matters less. Like my job is to like make sure shit gets done on time and that it looks right, but like I don't have any hands in the early creative process.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that like sucks because like you always want to have your hands in the earlier part so you can make things better. But now when racist shit happens and I'm like, ooh, is that the choice you want to make? I feel comfortable because I can just kind of like make side eye and be
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't think you want to do that, but no one will really listen to me because it's not my job. And then like no one will ever ask me to answer for it either. And that's not optimistic, but I often think about the Pepsi commercial and somewhere out there was a black person who made a face like, ooh, I don't think we want to do this. And they all ignored it. And I don't know. To answer your question, like I I I think about it a lot, and I honestly think these like white people who tend to be older and tend to be guys, like I think they honestly don't get it. Like I I think like I think like when you're dealing with like when you're dealing with like the team owners and stuff, like I think because they've only ever had to listen to their own opinions, I think they really believe that everybody else thinks the same way they do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that plus all of the other like years of like I don't know systemic racism that allows them to dismiss us so fast,
Mm-hmm.
like just I think they're just like consistently reaffirmed that they're right.
Yeah, it's I've always been fascinated with the way certain people develop their outlook on life, and especially when you're talking about someone who like is a well-to-do white man, and the ones who they went to the right school, they have the right connections, they have the right family members, and like sometimes I just think like, can you imagine a life where like the only opposition to the things that you want to do are just is just yourself, like the people
Yeah,
who really truly believe that I can do anything as long as I put my mind to it, whereas like for the rest of the people in the world who aren't people like that, they have to face these sort of obstacles in the way. And sort of going back on your point about what to do and how to react if some racist shit happens at work. I think it's so funny that a lot of organizations will try to be like, okay, we have an Asian person, we have a black person, so we're diverse. But it's like when you were the lone person who is in that organization who is representing your group or your community, it's like it's really not as easy as people think to just go up and be like, oh, this thing's happened, like this thing's racist, we need to do this, like because that like it's not going to go over well.
yeah,
And like especially when you layer that on top of the already pre-existing workplace politics. Like if you already don't get along with your boss, how the hell are you going to go ahead and tell them that they're saying some problematic shit?
and like yeah, and like also like when you're the only one, like the like you have to pick your battles,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Like especially so again in television, like when I look back on my days in development, I remember really pushing hard for this like gender non-conforming character. Like I was like, there's this character can be whatever. Like they can treat gender like a spectrum. They can go by boy pronouns, girl pronouns, them pronouns. Like let's just like have this character, and it wasn't even a main character. Like, it was such a, like, looking back on it, it was such a small thing, and I was really pushing hard to get this character to just, like, basically be allowed to wear a skirt at one point in time. And I remember, like, I've been pushing for it for weeks, and then this white guy director who, like, nice guy and was coming from a nice place, as so often of them are, was like, who wasn't on the project, came up and was like, but if we put that character in a skirt, won't others make fun of the character? And, like, his one comment, like, low key undid 2 weeks of me, like, pushing for this character, and his comment was wrong, but I was, like, really focusing on it. And then we had this other project, and there were no POCs in it, and the main characters were all, like, blonde, strawberry blonde, like, super white. And I wanted to say something, about, like, those characters, but I didn't, because, like, you can only do so much without being, like, labeled difficult, or, like, without being labeled difficult or angry or all the other labels people like to assign to Black women. And I really have been working on this, getting this character in a skirt. It's so, like, small, but, like, I worked so hard to get this character in a skirt that I was like, okay, I'm just gonna hold my tongue on that one, and hopefully I can bring it up down the road once this character is safe. But, like, yeah, like, I don't think people understand, like, and I think the companies that, like, hire us, like, pat themselves on the back, and then don't really think about any of the, like, they don't think about what we're facing, and they just expect us, like, to, because they've hired us, to A, be grateful, but B, like, speak out.
Yeah, it's like they think that just the mere fact that you were on the team, that somehow that means that the final product had your stamp of approval on it, and that you were okay with the decisions, and that, like, and unfortunately, it just, like, especially if your executives are a bunch of, like, white dudes, it's like, sometimes, like, you can have all these ideas that you're pushing and advocating for, but if the people at the top just constantly say no, it's like, it doesn't really matter how diverse your team is if your management isn't diverse, and if the people who actually have a final say on it don't want more inclusion, then it's just not going to happen.